I'm Christine. Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I am here with one of our amazing ambassadors for the dance wellness community, Mr. Tony Núñez. Absolutely love him. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Tony is a world salsa champion, a smooth world finalist, and a 9-dance national finalist. But those are just titles. Tony, if you've met Tony in real life, this man's energy makes you feel unlike anyone I've ever experienced. You are literally one of my favorite people to see in the ballroom.
Oh my God, same. I love every time we connect and hang out.
It's just so great. You are truly one of the pulses, I would like to say, of our industry, because every time I see you and every time anyone sees you, it's big hugs, big smiles. How are you doing? You're invested in people's stories, which we're going to get into because there's a reason for that. And I just think it's amazing. I want to start a little bit because there's so much to talk about. So it's hard to figure out where to start. But I want, first I want to thank you for what you do because it has brought our visions kind of together. And we've been talking about doing something like this for a very long time. So it's finally happening. But I want to know just quickly your take on what it is that you feel you bring to the ballroom dance industry and that that you can provide, but also that's how we can kind of get into all the things we're going to discuss.
Yeah, so I guess if I had to boil it down to like one fundamental thing, it would be authenticity. And the reason why I say authenticity is because I guess I just have always had a path of doing it my specific way. And it's not like, oh, I'm doing it my way or the highway kind of a thing. It's just these are the things that had worked for me, and this is why I did it in that way. And despite other people doing it every other way, and which is great because that stuff works for them, but like for me, I had to find my own way. And so that type of authenticity and being true to who you are every step of the way on your path, even though we all falter from that here and there, I think has been the most important thing for my brand, I guess, because that just is what I lead out with when I take on a project.
Yes, I love that you said that. We just had a live with one of our practitioners, Areste, and he said something that I was like, oh my God, that's just so brilliant. He was talking about how people patent ideas. And he's like, I really don't think it's necessary sometimes, especially in our industry, because somebody can steal your idea, they can steal your choreography, they can steal your dress idea, but they can't steal who you are. And I was like, oh my gosh, say that louder. Like, they can't steal who you are. And like, it's so obvious, but like, nobody's saying it like that. And I think that is the full authenticity of what you're talking about. We try to tell people, even in the world, like, forget about just ballroom, but in the world, we try to say, be you, embrace it. That's your superpower. But then at the same time, it's like, if you're different or you're not falling in line with certain things, it's like, well, now you're going to be judged slower, or you're going to be, some people are going to look at you differently, or whatever the situation may be. And that's something that you and I talk about a lot.
Oh yeah, so my degree's in education. And I remember learning about the education system in the United States and how it was first developed in during the Industrial Revolution. And so what they did was they had one foreman or the teacher giving instructions, right? And the students were more so, and to this day we still have that. We're more so are more so graded on how they follow those instructions versus the actual content themselves.
Correct.
And as we see today, content is a very big controversy as to what can be presented in school systems and class systems and whatnot. But so much so that when kids leave from the first, 1 through K through 12, and they hit college, they're super overwhelmed and they're super like, whoa, what's going on? Because all of a sudden they're expected to be fully realized people
Oh,
that should know who they are and should know how to function, whereas we've made them perfect robots. And so I always say that the ballroom industry is kind of a microcosm of the United States, in that, specifically in this way, is that we groom cookie cutter dancers and cookie cutter industry professionals as well as students to fit a certain mold that is acceptable, but that also has worked before. And, that's why
right.
the traditions are very hard to break, right? But then all of a sudden they make these finals or they make the top three, and now they're expected to just be a complete, like, fully realized individual, authentic couple bringing something to the table when they
Right.
were just
Now
doing
you
what
have to
they've been told
reinvent your
for this whole
style. And it's
time.
like, wait a minute, I haven't been trained
Right.
to do that. I've been trained to follow the rules the whole time.
Right. It's
Yeah,
almost like a military thing, right? Like you're
right.
very told to, be this type of structure for a very long period of time. And then essentially, when you get into, a prominent position because you followed the rules, or a good enough position because you followed the rules enough, all of a sudden they're like, well, it's not really authentic. It's not really original. I'm getting bored with it, when you're being
Right.
compared against the other finalists who are
That's
just as
right. Now
good,
you can
right?
make your own rules. And it's like, wait, what?
Right. So
Yeah,
it's like, oh, okay. But the things that you've been telling me my whole life or the whole time here of like, no, you can't be that. You can't do that. You have to do it like this. No, we had to push it away for so long. And now you want me to bring it back. Like, what? You know? So,
so true. I'm so glad you related that to school system because that's something we discuss as well. But I've never heard it put that way before. I've obviously heard, yes, that like school doesn't create, free thinkers. It creates more employees that follow instructions, and that is something that we all kind of have are discussing these days, especially in the coaching world. But but to be compare it, I think that that's such an interesting thing that you say because you're right. You get to a certain point, um, and then you get to college, and then it's like, oh, now you have to decide what you want to do with your life, and it's like, well, this whole time people have been telling me what to do. So you're not encouraged to free think in that situation versus then when we do it in the
correct.
dance world, you're right. It's the same kind of thing. And then you get to the top and it's like now you have to sprinkle your dust on it, sprinkle your sauce on it and make it your own. But you haven't been working, that's like a muscle. You haven't been working that muscle to be your own authentic, unique person. You've been trying to fit the mold and make your alma mater the same as everyone else and da 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 and all. And it's like, what? So that I like that you,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
a very visual representation of what we're experiencing here.
Right. And so essentially that's when I talk about my personal authenticity is that, and when I how I lead off with that with every
Mhm.
project, it's every person that I come in contact with, I'm trying to engage who they are authentically and sincerely. So
Yes.
that way they can feel comfortable, provide a comfortable landing pad or a comfortable space for them to be exactly who they are, despite what they've been told this whole time.
Yeah.
And so that
It's
way
a
they
lot of
can start
unlearning.
to, yes, yes. They can start in mixing in who they are with a lot of the methodologies and points that they get from this industry.
Yes. Yeah, because we're not saying that the industry doesn't have a lot to offer. It's just it's the fundamentals of it. But what makes this an artistic medium is the fact that it is creative and everyone comes in with a different perspective. If we had a bunch of people painting or, drawing, we wouldn't want everyone to draw the same picture. I mean, ideally, we would want, if we were creating a museum of art, we would want there to be eclectic things. So yeah, so that's a big thing that we talk about with is you obviously compete as a professional and have had, a wonderful career in so many different areas of not just in like the four styles, but you've also competed in other countries and you've done so many really, really cool things. But I think where you shine the most is, like you said, your authenticity is with the pro-am experience, because
Mm.
this industry truly is, it's a wonderful business when you understand how to do it. And so many people, I think, just do it because it ends up being something they fell into, or it's an easy choice for them, or they were good at it. But then
Mm.
being good at the dancing part is not the whole package. And that's what we've seen more often than none with certain professionals, um, that it's about creating an experience for your students and your partners that you're dancing with. And so I want to talk more about that, because you discuss a lot about the relationships that you have with your students in the sense of helping to build them up, with their confidence and things like that. And also just like you said, every project is all about kind of that storytelling. You really want to give an experience not just for them, but for their audience that they're performing for.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's just the biggest thing because storytelling, it's like we all, that's why we're all here.
Mhm.
That's why we're all here.
Yep.
We're here to experience stories. That's why our souls are here on this planet. We're here to experience stories and experience the human experience in its authentic form. And so when we try to take on stories that literally have nothing to do with us, or maybe a character that has nothing to do with us, we see the story is just a little bit empty, right? Or shallow. And and people are not drawn to that. So you could be the most technically efficient and beautiful uh, whatever at your craft. But if that authentic story of who you authentically are is not in the mix, then obviously we get bored, as a
Yeah, yeah,
society, as
yeah.
an industry, whatever. And
Yeah, it's
so,
very clear when you see a couple do a showcase, whether it be pro am or pro, and you feel something, and then you go and talk to them after, and you're like, did that happen to you? Or like, is this your story that you're telling us? And like,
mhm,
and nine times
mhm,
out of 10, it ends up being that way because you felt something. You're like, wow, I could just tell you were just pouring the emotions out,
right,
versus you chose a song, you picked a storyline, which again, some people would say, well, I don't really have a story to tell, so I'm just going to pick something and roll with it. It's like, right, but there's always something there that you can connect to, whether it's a song you just love and you jam out to in your car. That could be a story. It doesn't have to be, tragedy or, whatever.
right, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't have to be a sad story. It could
No.
be a happy story, whatever it is. But as long as it's authentic, it's gonna read,
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the biggest approaches that I take with my students. It's like a lot of times I'll get a student who will just be you wanting a change in whatever, however they've been pursuing their dancing. And they just want some type of change, whether it's like to add to it or to just replace their existing structure. And I will say, well, before we throw the baby out with the bathwater, let's just talk about where you're at in your life right now, and let's
Hmm.
figure out, and really delve into kind of what you're experiencing emotionally and psychologically. And so once we start, bringing that to the table and start bringing that up, then it's easy for me to pick a dance style, pick a song for a show, pick
Hmm.
something that's going to relate to the experience that they're going through. So
Right.
that way we can kind of use that as a therapeutic methodology to kind of work things through and get them to that authentic place a little bit sooner.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking also of celebration, I mean, you've had some amazing students with some amazing stories. One of them that well, I've known him for a while, but he just told me his story about in California Star Ball that lost his home to one of the fires. And then he was
Yeah.
just, I'm just so excited to be back in my home. And I mean, he was just exuding light that entire competition, so excited to be
Yeah.
back on the floor with his dance family and be back in his home, and everything was about that, and it was just such a beautiful victory lap for him. So that's a good
Mhm.
example of but you have some amazing stories that you're telling out there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I think that that's kind of what I don't want to say it shouldn't be a disruption. It should be an enhancer of the system. It should be a beautiful thing that the system, kind of creates and holds space for. But oftentimes, when you have a very traditional structured industry,
Hmm.
um, uh, those types of authentic stories, we are always kind of, I don't want to say at war with the structure of the industry and how it goes and how it's been going and the
Yep.
aspect of it, so then you always get, when you put authentic stories out there, you always get a polarization. And so that's
Yeah.
what I mean when you have that polarization. We disrupt the system a little bit, but I think it's making the system uncomfortable enough so that it can grow, because everything
I
needs
agree.
to be uncomfortable so it can grow, right?
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, how are we going to evolve and expand as an industry, as a creative medium, if we don't push the boundaries of what's possible? If we're constantly all doing the same steps, the same thing with the same colors and the same this, like you said, I mean, judging wise, I would be bored out of my mind to watch that all the time. The first person that comes out of my mind when I think, obviously, a lot of people felt this way was Max and Tatiana when they came in and they were just like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
doing something that was just so different and throwing samba rolls in their foxtrot. And just like every time she would come out with some Egyptian look or Greek goddess or something. And it was just so unique and so you couldn't take your eyes off of them.
It
And
was
I
fun. Yeah.
it was fun. It was, yeah, it was entertaining. And and we look for a lot of that. I feel like that when I see you on the floor, I always feel like I'm looking at something extremely unique and different, and you're giving me a performance. And what I love is every time I see you on the floor, I don't see the same routine twice, because
Yeah.
you hear a different song even though you're dancing your same choreography. You hit
Yeah.
different accents, you hit different things. Another person I love that does that is Sarah Nolan. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
When her and Nikolai, every time I see her, it's always some different energy, face, whatever she's feeling in that
Mm-hmm.
moment based on the music she's hearing and where she's dancing. But the choreography is basically the same, but you just feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to miss what she's going to give me, And that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
so thrilling and exciting to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah. I mean, I think, our industry is comprised of a lot of different types of dancers, but like, I don't want to boil it down to two types, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, um, it kind of gets fundamentally boiled down to, we have athletes and we have artists. And some of them, and all of us are trying to kind of do some type of blending of the two
Right.
to whatever extent that we can, but we're going to be heavier in one than the other,
Yeah.
So, the people that you mentioned obviously are more on the artistic side. And really, I think the thing about artistry is it's not about whether or not you can be creative or you have that muscle. It's about whether or not you can really be vulnerable enough to open yourself up to being able to publicly feel in that moment,
Hmm.
despite the chaos that's going on around you.
Well, and not
And
not be
because,
worried that someone's going to judge you, and because that's the thing, you have to be so confident in yourself, that self-actualization we were talking about, that you really don't care about, like, you care about the judging because you want to compete, but at the same time, if someone says they don't like what you did, that's a personal opinion. That's not because what you did
hmm
was bad.
hmm
I think that's
hmm
what, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and sometimes, like, and we live in that structure in this industry where we have judges, we employ judges,
Right.
so the judges are going to do their job.
That's right.
so
And we want them
so
to. Yeah.
yeah, and so it is going to be judged regardless of how
Right.
you feel about it. And so yes, it takes courage, it takes
Hmm.
um bravery. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're not scared shitless, but it
Right.
just means that despite being scared shitless, you're going to be able to go out there and still do uh, what you came to do, which is feel publicly authentic
Absolutely.
emotions. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears just for a second. We were a while back when we were having like the Black Lives Matter, the movements, you know, and all of these different things. We talk a lot, you and I, about, you know, black and brown people. My husband is dark skinned Haitian. I wanted to do an episode on my podcast back then about in 2020 about that movement. So, but I felt a little insecure about this white girl doing a talk about that because everyone wasn't going to take it very seriously. So I had a good friend of mine who actually worked in Black studies in a college, and we discussed it, what was happening and what kind of like the roots of it all. But I also felt like, no, you know what? I think this is why we have a big problem, is because everyone should be having this conversation. I don't think it should just be a conversation that Black and brown people need to be having. I think white people need to get in on it, because why do we have the term white privilege in the first place? Because we don't have to have that conversation. We can step aside and we can decide to just keep living our life and doing what we need to be doing. But like, now that we're all kind of marrying each other, my son's going to be, my son is half
He's a brown
half
baby.
black, a little brown baby. And
Little
like,
brown baby. He looks like my son.
he does. And I wanted to be able to answer his questions when he gets older and starts asking me certain things. Like, why would I be naive to that and be like, go ask your dad? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. That feels a little bit irresponsible with the topic, that I didn't even care to seek out and research what I was, you know, what I got myself involved in when I married, you know, a Haitian. And so that being said, I've learned a lot about the Haitian culture, which is a whole nother conversation with, you know, the country and the state of that as well. But also, yeah, I just want, because we talk a lot about, the reason I'm getting into this is because we talk a lot about there needs to be more representation on the floor, right? When it comes to dancers on the floor and in finals, meaning that, again, that anything that looks a little bit different from the norm or what we've had for decades is going to be different. And that doesn't mean that now we've had, again, the one that we're going to talk about all the time is Antoine, right? He's Haitian, Latin world champion, or rhythm world champion, all that stuff. He was bringing something so different. But I remember talking to him and him saying, yeah, it took a long time for everyone to come around and be my cheerleader. A long time. And I know you've had those conversations with him too, because he's vocal about that. He's like, we don't need to not be vocal about it. That's the conversation. And so I want to speak a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Emmanuel, first and foremost, they're in for me, growing up in the industry, and I kind of grew up in the industry in a very interesting time, specifically because it was like the end, I don't want to say the end of the old times and the start of what it is now, but it was kind of on that cusp. You know what I mean?
Right.
There was kind of the glory days of that a lot of the older judges will speak about of the ballroom industry.
Yeah.
And if you know, you know. And so I'm not going to get into it, but like it was an interesting transitional time. And at that time, I remember seeing a sea of white people, a sea of Eastern Europeans, and from everywhere else, white people, and also like Emmanuel and Felipe in the rhythm final.
Felipe,
And that was it.
That's it.
Like, and
yeah.
that was it. And you were like, oh, okay. And then, and then I remember Jose de Camps came back, and, even though he's Dominican, I just remember, oh, okay, these are men finally that I could, see myself on the floor. Or if you look at other men who have been on the floor, who were gay, who maybe they were allowed to be out on the floor, or they weren't allowed to be out on the floor. It just depends on their generation and their decade and when they competed or whatever. But when I remember, some of the early on ones that were out and still, kicking ass, like Forrest Vance comes to mind, or some other, David Hamilton, and some beautiful like dancers and brilliant artists that definitely were kind of doing amazing things, which there wasn't that many of them in, like, even though people are like, oh, there's so many gay people in ballroom. Well, yes, but they're not like out, and they're not talking about it, and they're not, or they hadn't been. at that time,
Right.
and they weren't
Right.
living their full authentic selves. They
Yep.
just were kind of doing it. Like nobody was
Well,
telling you
right. And
that.
they weren't
Nobody,
using it as a strength in their skill. They were kind of trying
correct.
to just not let it be a conversation.
Right,
And
exactly.
that
And
is
which,
the initial problem for me.
yeah, for me, which was so sad about that is
Yeah.
that, because the AIDS epidemic, we lost in not just in the ballroom industry, but in the arts industry in general, we lost
Yeah.
so many brilliant, brilliant
Mm,
artists. I'm talking brilliant, brilliant artists. I mean, think of all the, people in the LGBTQIA community that really have been just groundbreakers in arts for eons,
right.
right?
Right.
And when you lose that amount, that's so many of them. You lose so many of them. The art now isn't as smart and nuanced, and so then therefore the spectator is not consuming anything smart or nuanced, and so they I don't want to say dumber, but they become less aware as a spectator. And so
Mm,
what we kind of come in contact with, what I've come in contact with, is that I've seen a very few amount of brown and black men in the industry in major finals. I've seen a very few amount of gay men in the industry in the finals. I wasn't really seeing that together, which is what I am, right? And I wasn't seeing that together. And so I was like, okay, I had to take a little bit from this and I had to take a little bit from this. That's why I
hmm.
had those great, beautiful conversations with Emmanuel. I had those
Yes.
really great, beautiful conversations with people like Forrest and Susie and all that stuff to really kind of, and Didio Barrera to really kind of understand
Yeah.
where they were coming from at that time. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And
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 also
what I
maybe
could
how they
do.
would have done it differently if they were able to be more authentic. Like I think that's also a conversation I want to hear that like or that's what I would have asked them is like, okay, this is what you did, but if you could have done something different, what would you have done? And maybe that's what I need to start
Well, interestingly
executing.
enough, when I did ask that question, um, because they never allowed themselves to go down that road or that pathway, they just couldn't really give me an answer for it at
Mm,
that time. And I remember thinking, okay, that's where we know it wasn't a choice, even though they say we chose to do it this way. It
right.
wasn't a choice. It was a way and a methodology that was forced upon them that they
Correct.
thrived in nonetheless, and they still did
Sure.
well in
Sure.
nonetheless, and they figured it out for themselves.
Right.
However, it was forced upon them. And so for me, I just knew at that moment in time regardless of whether people are going to love me or hate me or love what I do or hate what I do, does not matter to me. I cannot
Right.
do something that's forced upon me because I tried it. Like they tried it, but I was like,
Yeah.
this
I
isn't
mean,
working
we
for
all
me.
try it at some point, right? When you're trying something new,
Yeah,
or even when you're growing up and you're trying to fit into the cool crowds and all the things, like we all eventually are like, okay, let me try. You know what I mean? Let me see what this is like. And
absolutely,
I think the
absolutely.
people who either had really good parents, upbringings, had that confidence built into them very, very young. Like you said, that bravery, that courage to just stand up for yourself
Mhm,
and
mhm,
know who you are. That
mhm,
authenticity can't be boxed. It just can't be, whether it's someone else is trying to do it or you're trying to do it to yourself. It's really not going to stay in there. It's going to constantly be trying to come out of the box. And so eventually you just have to start learning to embrace that that is who you are and that's actually what's going to make you successful and make you
mhm,
shine and make you different. And whatever, that's the thing is we get that conflicting, well, that's not necessarily the answer because that may not be what is going to make you successful in our industry or in other industries. I think that's where you have to be brave and have that's a personal opinion because I think that we've seen those breakthrough people in so many different industries, whether it be basketball or on television or someone that said I remember uh just so many people have said, yeah, when I got into movies and TV, they said, I'm never going to go anywhere because of my nose or because of my this or whatever. Oprah has said that so many times. She's like, oh my God, people took one look at me and they're like, you're never going to be on TV. And now she's like the
mhm,
biggest television person ever, And so
mhm.
She believed in herself. She didn't let other people, that's very hard to do though, when you have so many people that you feel like, well, they've gotten to this place where I want to be. And I'm trying to, it's like, not a lot of people, I think, come into the industry or any industry trying to innovate it. They're just trying to be a part of it. Right?
Yeah, I think because we all kind of get involved in something for a sense of belonging, right? And
Right.
especially with
Community.
the yeah, right. And especially with the sense of body mechanic movements, when you incorporate that in it as well, it becomes a very kind of wonderfully addictive kind of
Yeah.
lifestyle, right?
Right.
And yeah, we would be remiss. We wouldn't have students, and we wouldn't be in this industry if we didn't, if it wasn't for that sense of wanting to belong, right?
Right.
Initially,
Right.
right? And but what we find out is, because I've had my fair share of experiences of belonging in different ways, in the extreme ways, from like cult-like kind of factions and organizations to just
Hmm.
just like in light ways, like a group of friends, like you were just talking about, trying to fit in with
Yeah.
the cool kids. And so when
Right.
you have that full spectrum and you run that full gambit of, okay, this, where do I fall on this sense of belonging? You're right. A lot of people come into that scenario or land on that spectrum in a very interesting way, just based on that some of them have it in them to be like, no, F this, I'm doing that, blah, 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 blah,
Yep.
blah, regardless of what you say. Some people are born that way. And then other
Right.
people are definitely like, yeah, okay, just very,
Yeah.
very, you know,
Yeah.
and how do, and sometimes, a good majority of the people, or a good percentage of the people, I should say, have the ability to find themselves along in that process, but it's their
That's
journey that
beautiful.
gets them there, right?
Right.
Right? Some people will never get there. They will never get there to their
Right.
authentic self, not in this lifetime. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just not the lifetime for them, right? But
Right.
but but at the end of the day, um, where we come in as professionals, and which is
Yes.
why I'm so happy that, and I say we, and I include you, and I'm talking about you in this as well, when you create space for personal, authentic energy, and you encourage it, and you celebrate it, and you reward it, and you go out of your way to do that, right?
Mhm.
What you're doing is you're giving people that opportunity. You're giving people that space, that home for them to be like, oh, I can do it this way. I
Yeah.
can do it in a very specific way. And you open up the neural pathways, not just in their mind of possibilities, but in their hearts of motivation. And
Mm,
those neural pathways like literally start to do things. And it just takes a little drop, and the little ripples
yeah.
keep going forever. Yeah, and
Right.
you
It
know that.
spreads.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I mean,
yeah,
that's essentially what we're trying to do here. Again, these conversations that we say we're wanting to have, it's exactly what we're trying to do. I mean, yes, I've experienced it as a professional on the dance floor. I've experienced it as an amateur on the dance floor when I had, my dad who is my professional or other professionals that were guiding me on my journey and my authenticity, and what I wanted to say. And then I started doing that for students as well, which was amazing. But this platform to be able to do that, to share with people, like it's okay, because I think that's the biggest thing too, is it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to,
yes,
right?
yes,
It's okay
yes,
to feel like you
yes,
need to heal, like you need to take a
oof,
break, like you are not
yes,
in a good place.
need
Those
to
are things
rest.
to rest. We don't talk about those things a lot because our tagline as an industry is the show must go on.
Right, right,
And
right,
as
right, right.
beautiful and poetic as that tagline is, it is not, it's just not the narrative that we need to be pushing, because it it pushes down healing and resting and playing and those types of things. And and it starts to create toxic work environments and toxic play environments, because our amateurs students are not here to work. They're here to have fun. So if that
Yes,
starts to become like work, or if it starts to become aggressive or too judgmental. Why would they even come and do this? They could just go back to their life that they're running away from in the first place. You know what I mean? And not saying that people dance because they're trying to run away from their life, but I mean, it is a very nice hobby and outlet for people to express themselves when most of those people are like CEOs, doctors, lawyers. They have to be a certain way in their profession. So they come into dancing. I mean, I had a lawyer I was dancing with at some point, and I would just out of courtesy always say, "How was your day?" And he's like, "I didn't come here to talk about my day." he's like,
Yeah.
he's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. He's like, "I just want to dance. Like, I'm here to," because
Yeah.
he was someone who was in a lot of criminal cases. And he's like, "My job is so stressful."
Yes.
He was really good
Yes.
at it. And so for him, dancing was a way for him to just leave everything at the
Ah.
door and come in. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt honored that he trusted me with that
Mm-hmm.
journey to be able to
Mm-hmm.
provide him with joy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what, that
Yeah.
is like the
Yeah.
best compliment someone can give you, is, "I'm trusting you with my joy." I'm like,
It's
whoa.
even deep. It's even deeper than that. Like, because joy is one of the byproducts. Because what wind up happening. I had a similar situation with a surgeon who would come in after these, like, 5, 10, 15 hour surgeries before he would go home, and he'd be like, "Okay,
Ugh.
I need to transition before I go home. I need to help. This is my transition." So he would take his dance lesson. And what you see is, obviously we have that thing of, our students, and we do it too. We take our work home with us, and
Yeah.
we those stories, those people are in our head, whatever, and we don't fully leave work, and so we're not fully present at home. And so we're actually, when he came in, and your student came in as a lawyer, to really be fully present, you
Mhm.
were helping him re-find himself and that new version of himself after those days
Mhm.
events. And so you
Yep.
were helping that, not just that transition, but you were that discovery process of who that current person
Right.
is in that current state. And that is a huge responsibility. And I don't think dance professionals really take that into consideration enough.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. I mean, gosh, the visual of that, of just like kind of almost helping him remove the trial from himself of what happened that day, or like you said, the surgery that he had to do. Um, but nobody does that really for us. Like you said, we go home with their stories and helping them through what they're going through. And now, like, there needs to be a community and a space for us to come and heal and feel like we can detach and wind down after a day like that as well. It's not as serious as going through a surgery. I mean, but I also, you don't want to compare, like,
No, but I
everyone's
mean,
feelings are valid, you know?
but a service is a service, right? And
Correct.
for somebody, for somebody like those students, patients or clients, they were providing a very important service to their, but those, that doctor, that lawyer, they thought we were providing the important service for them. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
and they
That's
put
what's
it on
very
the same
interesting. It's
level
all
of
perspective.
importance, right? Yeah. So it's all perspective. So it's not like, yes, I mean, but service is a service, right? You're doing
Mhm.
service for the sake of bettering your environment, period,
Correct.
right? And when we do it from that angle, when we take it from that angle, it doesn't matter if you're serving ice cream. Like, it doesn't,
That's right. Joy
you
is joy.
literally make such a, yeah, you
Yeah.
make such a big difference, in the environment.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. I want to, because again, this is so interesting as we say this, when we start to put that energy out there, this is where the bravery really takes effect, but starts to pay off, is when you're doing something that's different, whether it be a different choreography, being more flamboyant on the floor, being, someone of color on the floor in a final that is not as common, or trying to share a new idea with someone, or an industry. And that's what I feel like is happening right now. And so now I've been doing this already for a year, the dance wellness community. I've been kind of like posting newsletters, sending some things out, doing some stuff. And it's fine. We're finally starting to see people come out and actually post things on social media, not even associated with the community, just on their own, being like, enough is enough. And I was telling you
Mm.
about that when we were chatting the other day, of like certain things that have
Mhm.
happened already that I'm just like, oh my gosh, like energetically, it feels like things are moving because we're asking them to move, you know? So we have like, a really good friend of ours who's just recently, because I was just reading one of his Facebook posts about, um, him taking a break from our industry due to physical and mental toxic work environment, financial stress. We don't talk about the financial part of this industry ever. Um,
No.
and not feeling like he's moving forward in his career. And then one of our other friends who said he's transitioning from being a people pleaser to someone with more boundaries. It's so weird because it's hard to tell if I'm being mean or if you're listening to your own feelings because so used to listening to others and what they desire from you. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps.
Preach, preach, preach.
So one of our practitioners went in there and commented and did this whole comment for him. It was just so sweet. And it was just like I kind of want to speak a little bit on that because there's so much, whether it be first we talk about representation, authenticity, these are all such important topics. And honestly, I don't even want to say
Yeah.
heavy because they're not heavy topics. Being authentically, you should not feel heavy. It should feel light, right? It should feel so light. So these are things we need to be talking about. Toxic work environments is kind of a heavy topic, but when you're coming at it from the approach of wanting to fix that environment, it I feel like that can be a very healing space to be in.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I mean, I know you're seeing some of this too of people coming out and starting to be like, hey, this is just not working for us. The word I use all the time is sustainability. Like we can't all keep doing these long hours and not being compensated for it and, feeling like things are not, the way people talk to each other and, when everyone's on a time crunch and like all this stuff. And like you said, the way people are judging each other and all this stuff, our environment, our dance world is such a joyous place to be. We love dancing. We love sharing this joy of this thing that we get to do. And I think sometimes that gets overshadowed by a lot of people's insecurities that they're pushing out on other people.
Yeah, I mean, because think about it, any type of industry where you have to fit a certain structure. I mean, we
Mhm.
really are 100 years after I don't want to say the invention of dance sport dancing or ballroom dancing as a gig in
Right,
general.
right.
But like we still value heteronormative, patriarchal, Eurocentric couples and their stories over anybody else's, right? Because that's how it was. That was the value system 100 years ago. And that
Right.
was great and it was beautiful and it served its time. But with each generation that came up, we
Mhm.
found more and more people that found themselves based on who they were authentically, but based on the climate and the temperature of the world not being able to fit that structure. And then the pain and anguish that they've
Mm.
had to go through to put themselves into fitting that structure, all for the sake of just being able to dance with their hearts on their sleeves and express themselves in that way for that 1 minute and 20 seconds of glory
Right.
and exhilaration, right? So yes, of course, so many of the judges. I mean, when I was younger, I was a feisty one, and I say I still got a spice to me. However, I was a lot feistier, and I remember some very giant names in the industry that I would have some serious altercations with, or I should say, serious interactions with. And at the time, I was definitely one of those kids that just was like, you know, uh, like I wasn't wanting to be rebellious, but if they put that label on me, I was like, well, I'll show you rebellion, kind of a
Right,
thing.
right,
I
right,
was
right,
just
right.
very because you're young, you have that energy
Of course.
and you have whatever opinions you have. And what I learned is over the years is that those people, when they react to you in those ways, and then therefore you react to their reaction, you know, they're just reacting. They're a product of their own pain and
Yeah.
steps and anguish and journey. And so when you understand that people who come at you in those ways are
Mm,
coming at you from a place of pain, then the perspective shifts and how you respond. And when the
right.
perspective shifts and how you respond, and you respond more so out of love, then we get to a space where, oh, we get to pull people toward our side instead of being so
Right.
polarized, you know?
Right. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of when I was pregnant. You have all these people who bring their opinions on you and go, "Oh, just wait till this happens. Just wait till." And like you have to just be like, "That's not my story. Like that's your
Right.
pain that you're projecting onto me." And it's almost like feels like one of my girlfriends was like, "Yeah, it feels like they're like spewing hate at you. Like they had to go through this. So now if I had to go through it this way, then you have to go through it this way too. You're not going to have a great experience." And it's just like why would you want that for somebody else? Like it doesn't make any sense, you know? So it's yeah, it's just I feel like that's what's happening is that's what's really creating these toxic work environments is like a lot of
Yeah.
people who haven't really figured out what it is that maybe they didn't
They're
accomplish the
healing.
goal. They're
They haven't, they
healing.
haven't, they haven't, they haven't gone through their healing. And
Yeah,
so, and
that's what it is.
unfortunately, too many powerful people in multiple industries, including our industry,
Yeah.
too many prominent people have a lot of pain that they still have not started the healing process
Yep.
for, and then they have a lot of power and influence, and this is where we kind of get these environments fostered that we're talking about. But I think essentially what we have to really understand is, again, uh, I always say this, our industry is a microcosm of the United States. You know,
Yeah.
similar to the movements that are happening here in this country right now, and the types of things that are happening. You know, yes, things may seem very overwhelmingly overpowering
Right.
in a very specific direction, in a very specific flavor. But at the end of the day, it's who we are in our communities. And that's going to create our survival mode to come out of this successfully and also better off than we were before internally, right?
Agree.
Like much like the pandemic, like nobody anticipated
Mhm.
that, expected that, wanted that, but
Right.
we are all better for it,
That's
right?
right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so this is a very similar thing when we come against these constructs that are just so antiquated and no longer fitting the majority of the people that are on the floor trying to express themselves. It's no different than with that. You know what I mean? We really
Totally.
we really have to kind of um, just be okay with this is the reality, this is what's happening, accept what's happening, and do what we can for ourselves individually that we can positively impact our environment, which includes, like what you were saying, restoration, rest, healing,
Hmm.
making sure you are accountable to yourself
Mm.
first for your own healing before you even open your mouth to somebody. That type of a thing.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
things create the difference in the room, then the ballroom, then the whole industry.
Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree. I was about to ask to kind of wrap it up, what are your wishes for our industry moving forward, how we can all help? But I kind of feel like you just said it. But is there anything
Yes,
else that you
exactly.
feel? I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm always since I had this idea, you were one of the very first people I thought of at the very top of my list of like this person needs to be involved. Um, you have always exuded, again, everything you told me in this episode is no surprise to me. I've experienced your authenticity firsthand in the most beautiful way and seen it with your students. I've seen it with me, with my son, I mean, you do it with everybody and how you want to make people feel included. And it is just such a beautiful thing to witness if everybody, was like that. We'd have a very different world, let me tell you. But but no, but I mean, listen, it's an honor to be able to call you a friend, but also just for you to, I know how many people you're going to help by just this conversation alone because you're giving what you do when you see people is you giving people permission to be themselves. Like that, I think is the most beautiful
Right away.
gift, right? Like
I'm a
we can
green
teach
light.
people how,
Green
yeah,
light.
that's it. We can
Green
teach
light
people how
means
to
go.
dance. We can teach people how to tell their story, but you're giving them permission to tell their story. They're giving them permission to be themselves. And so many people stop people from doing that. They make them doubt their natural instinct. I mean, I'm seeing it with my son. He's almost a year old and he's doing things that you're just like, oh my gosh, if you knew better, you wouldn't do those things. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my programming. Why would I want him to not? I mean, certain things, it's
Mm,
like maybe don't go off the bed
mm.
head first. Like that's something that you learn.
Right. Right.
But there are certain things like when he's going to start to have feelings and belief systems and thoughts that I don't want him to feel like he can't share those thoughts with us because he feels like he shouldn't be sad or
Mm,
he shouldn't feel or he
mm,
shouldn't, like he was
mm,
he got a shot yesterday and he just started crying. Like my son never cries, but he bawled. And the first instinct is like, okay, let me make you laugh. Let me make you not cry. And we both, Noel and I both looked at each other and I was like, he just looked at him and he's like, just go ahead and cry it out. Like, just cry it out. Like what you're, it's going to last like what, 5 minutes? Like, cry it out. Like you don't need to be holding it and be strong that it didn't hurt or you didn't feel scared or whatever. Like, just let it go so it doesn't stay inside of you. Yeah.
oh my
Listen,
God, yes, yes, yes,
one day at a time.
absolutely. Yes.
Parenting is
I
no joke.
know, I know, I know. I applaud you so much. And hearing you, because my stepdaughter has a mixed son as well. And there's concepts that we talk about this all the time. There's concepts that she just never in a million years had to think about in her lifetime. And now she's like, oh, this person who came out of me, who's a part of me, is having this completely different experience than me. And I'm like, what? And that's what I would love at the end of the day. What that particular experience is so poignant and beneficial for a voice like you in our industry, because at the end of the day, I really would love for you talked about, what type of movement I would like to see in the industry.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I would love for the first thing is the healing, for people for everybody to be accountable for their own healing, number one.
Yes.
And then recognize the people who are not actively being accountable for their healing, and then draw the appropriate boundaries. So that's number one.
Yes.
Number two is I would love to, because I don't want to put anything on anybody, but it is time for people who have upheld the value system of traditional stories to be more actively vocal about their uh, acceptance and opening up to alternative stories.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, I would love for a lot of our competition organizers and judges and industry longstanding professionals to really get to that space where they can acknowledge that other dancers have completely different experiences that are just as valuable and need to be shown, spoken about, and appreciated as just as much as the traditional ones that we've had for the past
Yes.
100 years.
Beautifully said. Yes, I 100% agree with you because every story we can learn from every story and every story has value and it's not up to one person or a group of people to judge whether that story is valuable or not. And I think that is absolutely how we need to move forward. And the whole goal here is not to dismantle people and dismantle our industry in its traditional senses. It's to create sustainability and healing and wholeness and the community we all came in here for. It's to make us feel closer and more connected. That's what we're
Mm,
wanting to do. It's not the
mm,
storytelling is for connection. It's not because my story is better than
mm,
your story or I don't value your
mm,
story. It's not to judge each other's stories. It's to say, this is my story and this is my story and this is my story. And then we can all come
mm,
around and be like, oh my gosh, let me hug you. Let me hold you for that. Let
mm,
me hold space for your
mm,
story.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
that just sounds so beautiful. And it sounds like exactly what we try to do in dance and why it's such an artistic medium And yet we're not really doing that, on a big
Yeah.
scale. And so that sustainability of and sharing and embracing of each other is really what we're looking to do here. And I think that those
Yeah.
are beautiful goals moving forward.
Yeah.
How that
Leading
are
with love first.
leading with love. Yes. And they're not too, I mean, I would say they're not too complicated. Yes, the people who need to look at themselves as far as healing goes, I'm going to put it out there. We're here for you too. Like it's not that we're just here for the people who are addressing their healing. If you're not addressing your healing and you feel like you want to get, help privately, like we're here for the whole spectrum of everyone that wants to work on that. Because it's going to make you a better person, a better coach, a better judge, a better whatever you're trying to be.
Right, right. I'll wrap it up with this because
Yeah.
I just saw a quick video the other day, and it like literally like when you see something that shifts you internally, it's just like,
Yes.
oh, Um, so this woman was talking about her husband, and she says, I realize now that I married a 50-year-old broken child. And then the guy stops her. He says, okay, hold on a second, because the purpose of us here is to explore, our capacity for love, right? And he says, by your words, saying, you know, 50-year-old man child, if you were to invite me over for dinner, based on that description, I'd be like, oh God, I don't want to meet this guy. He's going to sound like a nightmare. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so he said, the reality is our words have so much power. Our labels have so much power
Yeah.
that we start to people will start to behave according to our words. And
Yeah.
so she's perpetuating that behavior of the 50-year-old broken child, right? By labeling it that, and then just and enforcing that, and by using the words. And so what we have to wind up understanding at the end of the day is, what if we were to lead off with, not putting that label or description on that person, and lead every interaction with love? Would it fundamentally change them? Maybe not, but I can guarantee you it'll fundamentally change how they interact with you.
Right. The experience is going to
So
change.
the experience with you is going to change. So who they are outside of you is not going to, it's not going to be a thing. It's going to be that interaction with you. And
Mhm.
by that, we can all kind of take ourselves, from different ideologies and different belief
Right.
systems, and really come together on the same page. And so, yes, when you say, for those people who haven't healed or taken the active journey to heal themselves, yes, we do still provide space for them. We still want to provide space for them, because at the end of the day, we want them to be aware that healing is possible in a
Right.
safe space within the industry.
Agree. Agree. Totally agree. Thank you for thank you for just being you. Yeah,
Ditto, my kiddo. I love you so much.
your authenticity is your superpower, and it is exactly what's going to help so many people, not just in dance, just across the board. And I'm so excited to share more of this with everyone because, again, like I said, it's going to give people permission to be who they need to be and who they want to be, because they're gonna see it's okay. Like the examples that you've been looking for, again, it's kind of like what we say in coaching. Like you're becoming that. You're that example. You're what you needed, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's
that's
beautiful.
most of our stories,
That's
right?
most of our
So,
stories. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing. So for those of you who are still, trying to find your way. First of all of the information that you need to be in touch with Tony or with us is in the show notes. Feel free to join us in the inner circle. It's our private community space where we have so much value content, newsletters, monthly amazing goodies, member only discounts, and all of these deep conversations with our practitioners. We have 11 practitioners. We're growing our ambassador list every month, and it is just such a beautiful thing to be a part of. And it is a safe space for dancers and athletes. And I like to say high achievers too, because we all are all of those things. To come and to feel safe and to express yourself. And maybe it is just you want to grow. Maybe you're not trying to heal from anything. Maybe you just want to just expand yourself. It doesn't always have to be, like Tony said, in a something you're recovering from. It can be a victory lap, but whatever that is, we need to have these resources for us because we're doing something incredible out there on the floor, and it takes a lot of physical and mental and financial strength to do what we do, and we need people to support us in that. And so here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Here for you.
I just want to say, on or off the record, I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. I just really know what you've been doing for at least the past decade and the type of work. And I feel like now you're finally kind of coming into this stride because I feel it in my soul. There's like a quiet calm when I think about you on this journey, that this is exactly where you need to be. And I'm so happy that you're just sailing so beautifully through it with it. And I'm so privileged and honored to be a part of this with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I received that, and I thank you so much for it. And I send it right back with so much love. It's an honor. It's something I'm very passionate about, as you can tell. And it's like you said, it's kind of what I needed, when I was coming up in the industry, and I needed this type of healing, and I want to provide that for people, especially because not just me, there's so many incredibly talented people in our industry that have knowledgeable, expertise on so many different topics we need that are not being discussed. And those people need a platform. That's the biggest thing, is we need to come together as a team, So, yeah.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
So, right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for being here, and reach out. We're here for you.